I think there's micro and macro opportunities. So like from the macro perspective, I think we've had like three big ones. So at least in my lifetime. So it's like we've had internet, which is like kind of opportunity number one. Opportunity number two is kind of like Web 2.0, which is social. And then opportunity three is AI now. So there's the three macro ones. Now, underneath of that, it's kind of like, well, Facebook ads was kind of like an opportunity kind of like within that. And then like Google search was an opportunity. Like all of those are kind of like kind of like micro opportunities. Like I think like TikTok shop right now, a lot of people are kind of like in that Amazon of 2013, 14. Like I know a lot of people who've really never done much. And then just like within 60, 90 days are doing $1 million a month. And it's just because there's a huge supply-demand discrepancy between the amount of influencers that are there that want to make money and the amount of products to sell. And they will just continue to populate it until eventually it becomes a stabilized market. But it's like when those land grabs occur, that's when there's typically outsized returns to be had. I think you have to have skills.
Just straight up.
Yeah, like you just have to have skills. Like I remember it was really funny, like our first ever conversation that we had, I was like, man, if I had your amount of following, I was like, I'd be a billionaire. Yeah. And I saw that as a supply demand, like, and even so, like when you asked just a few minutes ago, like, you know, what things are there now? Like I still kind of see social media still thinks there. I still think that opportunity exists for people if you're good, but maybe it's less so than when Instagram came out in 20, whatever year it was, when you could just post pictures of you on the sunset and have like 1 million followers and people would just buy because you just had this insane reach. But I saw it as the fact that we could still advertise ourselves and get paid to do it is still mind-boggling to me that like opportunity exists. Like you can build a brand and get paid to do it, which I think is insane. I think people don't do very much. I think people do a lot of talking about doing, not a lot of doing. And I think it's the doing that does everything. And I think and whether it's lack of motivation, lack of focus, lack of 100 different things, it just comes down to number of actions taken per unit of time. And I think the vast majority of people just wildly underestimate the volume that's required. And I think that's like, I hit on this so hard because like when, I'll tell you a story to illustrate the point. When I had my first gym, I had a mentor who told me that he got all of his leads off of flyers. And so that's what he did. And so I put out a flyer and I waited 2 weeks and one guy called me and said, hey, you dinged my Mercedes. And I was like, it's the only call I got. So I called the mentor up 2 weeks later and he's like, hey, how'd that go? And I was like ready to I was like, it didn't work, you know, like, and he was like, and he like totally took it in stride. And he was like, well, what was your test size? And I was like, well, what do you mean? He was like, well, what was your test amount? I was like, well, I mean, I put out 300 in total. And he was like, oh man, he's like, hard to know if anything's going to work with 300. He's like, we test with 5,000 per batch. He's like, and then once we find a winner, he's like, we do 5,000 flyers a day. And I was like, oh, so he's doing 150,000 flyers a month for his business and I had done 300. And this is why, like, I think the vast majority of people dramatically underestimate how much volume it is. Like, I mean, right when we started this, you're like, seems like you tweet all the time. It's like, I post that often on a lot of platforms. Now, Twitter is my home base for where everything is generated from. But like we make 450 pieces of content a week. And so people were like, hey man, I've been making content for 90 days. And that would already put them in the top, 1% because everyone gives up. But if you actually made a post every day for 90 days, I'd be like, it's amazing. That's 90 posts. I do that in 2 days. And so, but they get there and they're like, but I'm not Mr. Beast yet. It's just, and there's just, people think that someone else is doing 2 times or 3 times as much, but it's more often that they've done 1,000 times or like 10,000 times the amount of work that they have. Like if you counted the amount of videos that you've put out in terms of longs and shorts or minutes of content that you've put out over the last 4 or 5 years compared to somebody, it's not even, it's like, it's so ridiculous, the discrepancy. Same thing with sales guys. They're like, hey, I've been selling for 90 days. So I'm like, okay, so how many calls a day do you take? And they're like, I end up taking, 5 or 6 live calls. I'm like, okay, so you've been doing it for 90 days. You've taken like 400 live calls. It's like, okay, well, this is John. He's closed 4,000 deals. Not calls taken, deals. That's why he's better than you. It's just like, there's just a dramatic misunderstanding. And that probably with a 30% closure, he's taken 12,000 calls. It's like, he's done 300 times the work you have. Like it's a lot, or 30, but like it's a lot more than people
So
expect.
how do you compete with that guy? Because I bet there's a lot of those guys out there.
You start. I mean, I think it's like you just start. And I think it's like, I think a huge amount of the delay that happens when people are starting out is the amount of time it takes for them to realize there is no easy way. So they spend a huge amount of time, they figure out how to do it, and then they spend a really long time trying to figure out if there's an easier way, and then they give up trying to find an easier way, and then they just start the hard way. Where do you want to start?
You think Twitter's like a high ROI activity for you?
Twitter's, it's like I can't help myself.
You just can't. That's one of your indulgences.
Yeah, like let's see what did people not understand about this? Suck at something, work for free lots of times, suck less, wait until people ask for free work and you can't take them on. Now you have more demand than you have supply, begin to charge money, boot out the free clients for paid clients, and then offer to keep working with those clients for money. Congrats, you have a business.
So I will say, I agree with that. Now, here's a counterpoint to that.
Yeah.
It is hard to take people from free to paying for a service.
Totally.
What is your way around that?
Well, it depends. So it depends on how high value the service is, number one. And number two is we start with free because you need to get reps because you probably suck. And so it's like you're really getting free feedback from people that otherwise like shouldn't because you will be terrible. But the transitioning people from free to paid really comes down to just how good you are. And if you are like, so for example, if I was redoing all your YouTube thumbnails and I said I would do it for free, now at your level, so everyone who's listening, don't immediately DM Graham because he already has somebody, right? But like the thing is go for somebody who's like 1/10 of Graham's size, who can't really afford it. Give that guy the thumbnails, and if your thumbnails beat his thumbnails, he will. If you're like, okay, well, I have now all these people who are paying me, so you can pay me what they're paying me, or I'm just going to work with them. At that point, he'll either pay if he's making any money on his channel or he won't. But like there's real value that's being created there. But the idea is you want to get your roster filled so that at that point, and I think part of this, I give this as advice because a lot of people in the beginning don't believe they can charge anything. And so it's like, fine, don't charge, get better. And then once you literally can't take people on, it's like, dude, I can't take you on. And then they're like, well, what would it take? And you're like, oh, money. I could do that. I could do it for money. And then now it's like you actually can help someone break through the belief of like, yeah, you can ask for money for stuff. Well, I'll say this. My big caveat for free, if I'm going to give it away, is I'll give something away for free. I'll give stuff away for free that costs me money if it's to a qualified prospect. So if I'm giving, if I'm trying to get into enterprise IT services, right? I'm not going to start with a local dry cleaning business who can't afford what I would like to eventually charge. So I want somebody who has, BANT, which is budget, authority, need, timing. So do they have the money to spend? Do they have the authority to make the decision? Do they have the need for the specific thing? Is now a good time? If I can get those 4 things, I'll give that person free stuff. Like if it's like, hey, I'm only doing back massages for billionaires. Fine. Then like you got to be a billionaire and I'll give it to you for free. Eventually I'll charge. But no, the homeless guy on the corner of the street will also take free massages, but he'll never be able to pay. And so it's not that we want to give free to anyone. It's just that we want to get the most qualified prospects, get good feedback from those customers, which we should treat them like customers so that we can then eventually charge people just like them based on the feedback that we got. Otherwise we'd be building a product for somebody who's the wrong person. Yeah, if people feel stupid saying no. There's 4 elements of value as I've kind of defined it in the book, the $100 million offers book. So you have the dream outcome, right? Which is like, what am I actually going to give this person? Every product is a dream outcome, every service is a dream outcome, which is like, what's the thing that they want to have happen? Okay, cool. So that's going to be our baseline in terms of value. Like if I'm going to help somebody make an extra $1 million a year or $10 million a year, that's going to be a baseline. But there's still going to be a discount that's applied to that. And there's basically 3 factors that apply to that discount. Number 1 is how fast is it going to happen? Number 2 is how much effort is it going to take on behalf of the customer? And then number 3 is how likely is it to occur? And so fundamentally, those are the elements of value that are either multipliers or detractors of what you can ultimately charge a customer for whatever it is that you sell. So how do I make it fast? How to make it easy? And how to make it risk-free? And so within each of those components, like part of the way of making it risk-free to them is if I have 10,000 other people I've done this for, it's much less risky, right? That's proof, right? You could also do that with covenants and terms. You could either do it based on performance that shifts more of the risk to you. You could also just give guarantees and satisfaction. You get guarantees that are conditional based on things that they do. Those are all elements of things that you can do to decrease risk, which you can reverse into price. And so said differently, I could say, hey, I'll charge you $5,000 to do this thing. And if someone says, well, no, it's like, okay, well, I'll do it for $3,000, but I won't give you a satisfaction guarantee. And then what you'll find happen is like, oh, well, I'll do it for $5,000 with the guarantee. So people will resell themselves on a higher price if you take away a component that's valuable. So that's the risk one. From a speed perspective, I would say that the more I've studied like human behavior, sales, persuasion, marketing, the more I really lean into speed. Like if you want to enter any new marketplace, just look at what everyone else is doing and see if you can do it in half the time. And there's just so much value in speed. Like humans are so immediate reward focused. Like almost every business can offer a speed version. So it's like you're a YouTube thumbnail agency and you say, cool, I'll get you thumbnails in a week normally. It's like, oh, if you want for 50% more, I'll get them to you in 24 hours. And for 300%, I'll get them to you in the next 60 minutes. The same cost to you, it's the same work, but you just give someone priority access and it's all margin. So it's like you can always play with speed as another variable of value. And then the third element has two pieces to it, which is ease. Like how does it have two elements? Well, one is what are the bad things that I hate doing that I get to not do as a result of buying, right? All the stuff I don't like, you're going to take away. Great. But I also want to make sure that I don't prevent someone from doing the things they do enjoy doing, right? And so I give a classic example of like, if you sign up at a gym, all of a sudden you have to start doing things you don't want to do. But you also have to stop drinking margaritas. You have to stop Taco Tuesday. You have to stop having cupcakes and stop having your McFlurries. So it's like you have to give up stuff you like and you have to do stuff you hate, which is why it's such a hard sale. Depends on how we define failure. So for the people who don't start, then it's probably a belief issue. Like they failed by never starting. And that's the vast majority of the people. They fail before they start the race. Of the people who do start the race, I think just for people sub $1 million, almost all, you know what, it's not, I won't even say that, it's at all levels. Distraction is a huge one. They start 6 businesses in the hopes that one of them will take off because they fundamentally don't understand how business works. Like you have very constrained resources in terms of time, money, effort, human capital, people. And you have to allocate all of those things to one business to just have a hope that it's going to work. So I think focus is a massive one. So that's kind of equal opposite of distraction. And then in terms of beliefs, the belief is the early days. Distraction kind of is pervasive. Sometimes it's just business model things, which I would just translate up to skill deficiencies. So once someone gets started, I think there's just 2 buckets. You've got procedural knowledge and declarative knowledge, which is basically the 2 types of knowledge that exist, which is knowing how to do something and knowing that something exists or that something's possible. And so this is where people talk about mindset, manifestate, whatever. It's like fundamentally, it's just like you have to believe that something's possible. And so if you meet somebody who's doing $10 million a year and they're the same age as you, grown in the same hometown, you're like, well, I guess that's possible, right? And all of a sudden it's like, man, my perspective totally changed. Like my mindset, I manifest it, who knows, whatever. But like you fundamentally now believe it can happen. Cool. So then the only delta that you have is how to do it. Right, that's procedural. So we could talk about private equity all day on here, and someone could listen to every private equity podcast in the world. You understand that people are doing it, but you don't understand how to do it. And you can understand all the steps, but until you go through it, you won't know how it works. Across what setting? Is that in a sales setting?
In a sales setting.
I think it depends on the reason the person said no. So that would be there would be a discovery question after that. So it'd be like, well, what are the variables you're using to make the decision? And sometimes, like, I think there's a big difference between a no based on value, or a no based on details, or a no based on authority, or a no based on timing. Like just kind of said, budget, authority, and timing. These are the kind of the components. Well, how do we make sure that we can I overcome some of these issues? Now, if someone's like, love what you have, I don't buy coats because I live in Panama. I'm like, okay, there's no need. Like I could try it. So whatever, like, hey, I've got a gym membership. Why aren't you signing up? It's like, well, you're in Iowa and I live in Florida. Like, like I'm never going to get there. Like, so it's like where, it depends on the reason for the no.
What if it's a price issue? Where do you draw the line between lowering the price and cheapening the product,
I never lower the price.
Getting someone who's qualified, or keeping the price the same, but losing the sale?
Yeah. So I'm a very firm believer in never negotiating with terrorists, including price terrorists. And so if someone wants to if someone says, hey, can you do it for cheaper? You know, we train on saying like, we can do it for more. And people are like, oh, okay, yeah, I got it. I'll buy at that price. But the price that you quote is the price that you stick to. Otherwise, as soon as you negotiate once, every price you have is negotiable, which sucks as a business. It is a pain in the butt, and I hate it. So, and you want price standardization anyways, because you don't want different people getting sold different prices. People could talk. It kind of sucks. So, my big thing is price and terms. And so if we have this price, if I'm going to change it, then I will also change terms. So if someone's like, hey, I would love to buy the $5,000 thing, but I can't afford it. If we've already looped a couple times and said, okay, why can't you afford it? Why? How important is this to you? What would it cost you to not do this? We quantify as many of these things as possible. And they're still like, I literally just don't have this amount of here's my bank account. I have $3,000. I will buy it for $3,000. Then in that instance, it's like, I can't ethically sell you the same thing as somebody else for $5,000 for $3,000. I can't do it. What I can do is I can remove a component. So let's look at these things that we have here. We have this guarantee. I can remove the guarantee and I can knock $1,000 off. Does that work? Okay. Also, instead of coming to the gym 3 times a week, if you come to the gym twice a week, will that work for you? Great. Well, let's just do that, and you can do one workout at home. So I'll want to change the terms of the agreement if I'm going to change price, but I won't just say, sure, I'll do it for less. I just won't do that. Oh, this is fun. Okay. So I eliminate it by eliminating it. And that sounds ridiculous, but I think the vast majority of productivity hacks can get boiled down to remove everything that isn't work. So my office has no outside light. I try to minimize all the sound in the office. I also put on earplugs and headphones. There's a great app that you can use that blocks your phone. So nothing can get through. So including text, phone calls, Slacks, everything, not just social media. It's a dead element essentially. And you have to physically move across the building, which is how I do it for mine, to mess up your phone. And then I just have a clear idea of the work that I need to do. And so it's when you eliminate everything else, and then I just set a kitchen timer for how long I expect a task to last. That is when I'm peak productivity per unit of time. Because there's nothing else to do.
So is this science or is this just you? Because
No,
eliminating natural light, why light? For me, I get
I get so distracted by light.
I get boost by seeing the outdoors and seeing greenery.
Yeah.
It's nice.
It doesn't work for me, man.
Yeah, and I'll be clear. If you find something that works for you, I'll say do that. And for anybody who's I do it your way. I don't care. I'm just saying this is what's worked for me. I do think there's a decent amount of data that suggests that anything that is not the work distracts you from the work. I think it's a them thing. So I don't see it as a problem at all. I mean, I think it's only a problem if you're making some sort of demand of the universe that your life must be a certain way. And so I think that's where it's kind of all the shoulds. My life should have meaning. My life should have this impact. My life should, all these things. If you believe that, then yeah, it'll be an issue because I believe in conditional shoulds, not absolute shoulds. So if this, then you shouldn't probably scroll on your phone as much. If you want to get in shape, maybe don't eat more than you burn.
Mm-hmm.
But don't eat more than you burn as a general statement. It was do whatever you want. It's your life. I just have the issue when people want something different than the way they act.
Mm-hmm.
I think Felix Dennis has a book called How to Be Rich. I think it's How to Be I'll Teach You to Be Rich or How to Be Rich, something like that. Anyways, it's funny, but the first chapter, he breaks down 11 levels of wealth. And he says basically after $400 million liquid, he's that's when you're truly wealthy. And he was worth that much money. He's at that point, it's you can really do whatever you want. I do think that the jumps are much smaller in the beginning in terms of what makes a really big difference. I think going from anything to about 6 figures a year is a material change. I think going from even 10,000 a month to 20,000 a month is a significant change. Going from there to about 40 or 50 is another change. And if we think about how we're defining the change, it's usually what are the variables that affect someone's daily living? So it's going to be where they live, the schools that their kids can go to, the vacations they can take, where they can stay, the food they eat, the clothes they wear. Those are all, but almost all of those are affected mostly, I would say up to kind of that 1% earning level, which is about $500,000 a year. Now you can live a baller lifestyle 500, but not really save anything. And so if you're a responsible saver, it really depends on your saving. I'm actually a lot like Graham, believe it or not, even though I spend money because Layla spends money, but by percentage of income, I spend a very small percentage of my income. And so it really just depends on your appetite for saving versus spending. And I think that's entirely personal because it's really just a question of risk. Like, how much risk am I willing to take on? But beyond that, that's just a ratio. But after that, it's like, you have nicer and nicer houses. You go on nicer and nicer vacations. You travel private. Maybe that's at a couple $1,000,000 a year. You start traveling private. After that, again, it's just like you're buying boats and you're buying houses. Like you can't, at a certain point, you really can't consume any more of it. I will say this is that I do think that, and this is controversial, but I do think that money, because they had a study, it's like up to $70,000 a year, and now like inflation adjusted, it's probably closer to 100. I actually think it continues to go up beyond that, but I think the problem is that people have a skill deficiency in terms of how to spend money. I think most people know how to spend money effectively up to $100,000 a year in terms of how to make their life better, but they don't know how to spend it above that in terms of like things that improve their lives. Like I think it's a learnable skill. I think you can get better at spending money to make your life better. And so for me, things that make my life better are going to be things that buy me time back, things that basically are all the annoyances and frustrations in my life. If I can pay to make those go away, those are things that net enhance. And then long-term in terms of purpose, it's like if you find something meaningful, you can actually devote real resources and make a change or an impact, which I think is,
you should see the updated study on that. That whole $75,000
thing. That's been debunked.
No, that was done in a different country with.
Okay.
So
great.
They
you
did
would
one.
know. So
they did one recently.
Yeah.
Within the last 10 years of the United States.
Okay.
And they found that I think it was about $150,000 was where you get peak dollar to value ratio.
Okay.
It continues up
just
higher,
diminishing returns.
but diminishing returns. And they found that the diminishing returns really stopped about $650,000
about
a year.
top 1%.
They found that over $1 million a year, you actually have lower quality of life. And I'm guessing it's because you have more
stress.
problems,
stress, money problems,
career issues, or maybe friends are not friends with you, or you have fake people
and you
around
gotta manage money, which is another, like a whole nother thing.
Right. But it was really, $650,000, $700,000, and then it just kind of tapers after that.
That seems super believable. But like after, $5 or $10 million a year in income, like the next strata is like, I don't know, 25, maybe 30, 40 million a year in income, like where you can do like even, crazier things, I guess. But at a certain point when you can buy the hotels you stay at, it's like whatever. I don't know. I don't have a need for a mega yacht. I think Layla wants one though.